What's good YouTube, it's White Mike, and today I wanted to talk about a few of the recently announced BlackMagic products, specifically the BlackMagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro. But before we get started, if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, please take the time to subscribe as it really helps the channel grow. So I'm sure that most of you are aware that BlackMagic makes a lot of cinema cameras and just products in general for the industry, and have always had some pretty affordable and popular cameras, especially the BlackMagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K and the 6K version, or BMPCC cameras for short. The 4K camera is a micro four thirds sensor camera, while the 6K version is an APS-C or Super 35mm crop sensor with a Canon EF mount. They have always been pretty affordable in terms of cinema cameras, but they usually are pretty hard to get upon release and also have quite a few shortfalls. The new 6K Pro comes in at $2,495, while the old 6K comes in at $1,995. Now insert the BlackMagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro, which is their latest version of these cameras, which builds upon the 6K and adds some noticeable upgrades to address some of the issues plaguing the older models. These issues were always mainly focused on battery life and the screen itself, but BlackMagic also added in some much needed options as well, which kind of makes it worth its pro name. The overall camera seems a bit more beefier and a bit taller with better cooling grills, and most likely it's also related to the now built-in ND filters, which is just awesome. All the buttons are pretty much the same aside from the ND filter buttons, but at the end of the day, you wouldn't mistake this camera for anything other than a BlackMagic camera. There is now also an optional viewfinder attachment which goes directly into the hot shoe, which can be useful on sunny days outside, where the screens on these cameras usually aren't all that usable without some sort of external monitor or shade or something. However, the new 6K Pro model has a screen with 1500 nits of brightness, and speaking of the screen now has a tilt function similar to the Sony cameras, which is great and pretty much a complete copy of the modification that people had been doing to the older 4K and 6K models. So it's nice to see that they went ahead and did that. Now, as far as addressing the battery life, the camera now has a bigger NP F570 Sony style battery, as well as an optional grip. So it looks like the smaller LPE6 Canon batteries are no more. Now, I don't know how many grips they will actually sell, because most people are going to be rigging this thing up and putting on a V-mount battery, but assuming the battery life is improved, that grip would make this a run and gun beast with a smaller footprint when you need it. However, you might need to invest in 2 cages to accommodate your different setups. Another notable upgrade is the additional mini XLR input on the side, but all in all, it's still made of plastic and is an upgrade from the 6K after all. So what are my thoughts on this camera? As a previous owner of a BlackMagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which is a lot to say other than just saying BMPCC 4K, whatever. These are some pretty good upgrades and something to consider if you're already a user of one of these cameras. There seems to be a lot of unjustified criticism of this announcement, assuming everyone was hoping for an 8K camera. But I have to say, these are some good upgrades functionality wise and ergonomically, which does set up the future version of this camera that could have an 8K sensor. I feel like they will phase out the 4K camera and just focus on the 6K Pro, and releasing an 8K Pro in the future. And although I probably won't be buying another BlackMagic product anytime soon, I would say upgrade if it's something you're considering, or hold out for that 8K version that may potentially come. Now, last but not least, I wanted to mention one other thing they announced, which was another version of their ATEM Mini, which is the Mini Extreme. The ATEM Mini and Mini Pro have 4 inputs, where the Extreme now supports 8, which is pretty cool if you're running a larger production, and the inclusion of even more dedicated buttons is always welcome. I personally prefer the ATEM Mini Pro because it does get you that monitoring, which the Extreme has but is not found in the standard ATEM Mini. And both the ATEM Mini Pro and the Mini Extreme come in an ISO version for the recording of each individual stream to an external media device. Now, the Mini comes in at $295 USD, while the Pro is $595 USD, and the Extreme starts at $995 USD without the ISO support. So all in all, $995 for 4 extra inputs and more dedicated buttons. I think it's more than worth it. And if you're not familiar, the ATEM Minis are used to stream content online with multiple camera angles. So that's the reason I got the Pro. I think it'll come in handy in the future when I want to do more live streams with more angles. All right, guys, so that's it for this one. As always, if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you immediately. Subscribe to the channel for more content just like this, or hit the notification bell if that's something you're into. That's a wrap. Card, although I've never, I always forget to go in and actually do it. And yeah, this is actually the second or third time I'm shooting this video, so that should be lovely.